Back then in League, there used to be a whole slew of trash tier champions where you would be considered trolling if you were to lock them in. It is not the case anymore nowadays, as I do believe that you can win with every champion convincingly, and no champion is really considered a handicap anymore. But that doesn't mean that there aren't champions so unpopular that they are considered dead. Here are some of the most unpopular champions based on my experience in recent times. Do keep in mind that the list might be different for others, so please don't take this as the universal list. A few honorable mentions are Heimerdinger, Seraphine, and Yorick. The arcane hype has breathed new life into pick rates of its champions, notably Jace, Victor, Vi, Jinx, and Echo. Strangely, I didn't see any increased appearances of Heimerdinger significantly in my games. I still do see him every now and then. It's not like he doesn't appear at all, but it's not like the other champions where Arcane made his appearance more frequent, and he rarely gets picked to begin with, and usually my side is the one to pick him whenever it's a case, and I almost never face him anymore. Seraphine never really hit the ground running after the dust settled around her release, and Yorick is only played by Avit Yorick players other than that one time Riot buffed him and his ghouls can one-shot you faster than any assassin in the game. Also, before anyone asks, yes, I see Talia more often than all of these champions.
You are not wanted here!
I can probably recall about less than 10 games where I faced Aurel in my life. It's only been pretty recent since her release, so it's not that bad considering the other champions in this list. So, the only one where I remember any specifics is when she was released and I was fighting her in the top lane, and it wasn't pretty for her. Remember how I said Seraphine never picked up any steam after her KDA release went to settle down? Yeah, Rel never had any steam to begin with. The water boiled for a really hot second and went to freezing point right after that. The reason why she is unpopular, I think, isn't because she is simply a tank support, because Nautilus, Leona, their existence contradicts that argument right away. But try to look back at her release. What can we remember? Nothing but a swift release along with the Battle Queens event, which is a shame because, her combos look very cool and her kit is really simple to understand. It's just, I don't remember anything on her release. I can't remember any sort of promotion. She can't solo kill the AD carry like Leona or Nautilus, and unlike champions like Alistar, building AP doesn't do much on her, even though she has AP ratios in all of her skills. And the killer reason is the fact that she moves slower than the fastest Titan after dismounting. Failing or missing an all-in with her W will almost always result in your death, because there's no way you can outrun anyone or wait for your mount cooldown to come back up before running out of health. And even when you succeed, it doesn't feel all that great. I played Rel, and even after I unleashed the nuttiest combo to win the game, I still feel awful to have to move at 250 move speed. It's like winning a hard-fought ranked game only to receive 3 LP and lose the next one to have 15 LP reduced. It happened before, and I stopped playing for a bit after that. Oh, Jackson, we can do the thing. Now or never. This one's a classic. Kalista has for a long time been known as the AD carry that only pro players play. She is the most pro play AD carry in my opinion, because she has a lot of team play mechanics that are better utilized in pro play. Her ult is mainly an engage tool for her support, or a get out of jail card if the support oversteps.
Okay, I see.
Wait, what?
You didn't know what to mean.
Wait, what? They waited for this snare? Her pro play presence was so strong that she had to be nerfed time and time again until she is in the stage she is today. A very weird mess of a champion. The idea of being able to jump every auto attack sounds fun, tons of mobility, but there's just too many downsides to her at this point that it doesn't feel worth it to invest the time into playing her and getting good at her. For one, her basic attacks alone don't even deal the full damage. They only benefit from 90% of the attack damage she has, and the critical strikes deal significantly less than usual. Getting slowed on Kalista is one of the worst feelings in the game. It feels worse than getting hard CC'd because it slows down her attacks as a result, which means, she's better off just standing still and auto-attacking for DPS when you get slowed. At the end of the day, her early game strengths are still really good because people are not used to facing her frequently. The only Kalista players I've seen in recent times amazing at her. They are god. Because they are the only ones that spent a ridiculous amount of dedication in order to play her to a really good extent. Most other players pick her up for a small period of time and they eventually move on to other champions, leaving only a select minority who have passed the plains of tribulations to reach their state of mastery.
Man, they're Shaco near.
I got him, boys. I'm backing off.
What was that, man? You gotta put that in the video now, I guess.
It was a high risk that paid off. Oh god. Ivern, the first and in my memory the only time Riot tried to make an enchanter in the jungle work, or maybe just trying to make it work in another lane in general. In a sense, he is really similar to Kalista in the fact that as a jungler, he is so different in his playstyle that most players drop him after a small period of time. And the only times he's picked are by the really good ones, or people thinking it would be kind of funny. The difference to Kalista is that Ivern is a support, and therefore generally assume that he has less agency or solo carry potential. It's just how it is. Another difference is that unlike Kalista, the thing that makes him a huge contrast in the jungle is that he doesn't kill the camps, rather he frees them and gets gold for freeing them. It's just a small difference in how he jungles, and his abilities themselves are not at all complicated to learn. The hurdle people face when practicing him is how to properly pilot a support in the jungle. How to avoid getting invaded and solo killed or whatnot, which is generally not something everyone would be interested in learning. It might be obvious now with the power of hindsight, but it seems pretty clear now that, especially in solo queue, most players are stubborn and selfish. They like to pick carry champions instead of supports or tanks due to the lack of trust or the constant desire to 1v9 the game. Why even bother picking Kog'Maw before your support locks in their champion when you know that there is a higher chance of them picking Ahri or Diana on support rather than Lulu or Karma? And it seems that Riot has noticed this as well. Ever since Ivern's release, they stopped trying to bring supports elsewhere and instead brought other roles like assassins and AD carries to the support role. And it looks like the trend is continuing with the release of Renata. This is a really weird one. So when Swain was originally given his full VGU, he periodically became a top tier mid and top laner, being a powerful sustain mage with decent burst damage. After a decent amount of nerfs, he wasn't the strongest, and his relatively weak early game became an exploitable weakness of his champion. But he was still picked. He was decently balanced. He still popped off regularly, showing that he's still a good and popular pick given the correct teams and matchups. He even became a bot laner in that one time that AD carries just weren't played at all. And after that, there were more rounds of nerfs, and he was finally weak. And it's all the more interesting how after a round of ability adjustments to give him some quality of life improvements, like his Q no longer stopping on the first unit hit and pivoting him to be a little bit tankier as a mage, he now ends up as a niche support picked for his high potential burst damage in the early game if paired with certain champions, take Jhin for example. Give a couple months after that and I don't see him. He's nowhere to be found. I was genuinely shocked when I realized after a while that, I don't see him anymore. For some discussions, it just seems like he's so bad, nobody wants to play him. There's no deeper reason, like he doesn't feel fun or whatever. It's just they don't like losing. Well, to be honest, I guess I can understand that. As a mage support, he's probably one of, if not the worst proper mage support out there right now. Orianna and Syndra would probably do a better job than he does in the bot lane. He has this stacking passive now that permanently gives him HP, so that makes him a pretty good AP bruiser later in the game, right? He would be if it wasn't so surprisingly hard to stack a good amount of health, and even then he pops like a balloon and can't sustain heal through the damage if he were to be focused down. Swain at the end of the day doesn't excel enough in any of his niches, in any of his traits. And for that, people can't find a good reason to pick him anymore. Swain has tragically become the closest thing in this list to a troll pick, even more than number 1. Speaking of number 1, the Wonder Child is finally here. This guy's presence in League is just a massive meme now, and in my opinion, he isn't even that bad of a champion. Out of the 5 champions in the list, he's definitely one of the stronger ones, maybe even the strongest one. So why is he number 1? A patch after he was released, although he didn't even have that strong a presence, he got nerfed by Riot because they felt like he will get stronger as people learn him, and so they weakened him as a precaution. This doesn't happen often, does it? They are more prone to even hotfix buffing if the champion's initial win rate within a week is low or something, so nerfing a new champion that's not that popular yet as a precaution is really special. Aurelion also received a small ability update that nobody asked for, which added a duration limit to his W expansion and made him even weirder to play. His playstyle of having to position really well and moving around to get good damage is already at the time a polarizing thing. So, making it that you don't have control over the maximum duration makes it feel even more polarizing. And the icing on the cake is when he isn't really, causing much of a havoc as other champions last season like Viego, Gwen, or Akshan, he got nerfed again. He got nerfed. This is so bizarre that someone actually bought a real life star and named it Nerf Aurelion Soul. I think in my entire life playing this game since 2015, I have only faced against him in the enemy team about 5 times, give or take, in my entire life. And I can maybe recall facing him as a lane counterpart twice. That is how rare facing him was in the Garena server. He's such a huge meme for being unpopular that he is famous now for being unpopular. It's even sadder to think that Aurelion Soul was the reimagination of a dragon champion, Ao Shin. He's a cool concept that many fans had loved and had been waiting to see finally come to life after being cancelled originally. A champion many had assumed to have the potential to be extremely fun, explosive, and just overall be a popular addition, only for him to end up as a meme and one of the least picked champions in the game. Aurelion Sol isn't number 1 merely because of the lack of presence he has in the game, but also because of the presence he has elsewhere due to his absence in the game. By being neglected by Riot, he has found a new ascended form in the internet and will be remembered even after League dies. On another note, I'm not too familiar on Legends of Runeterra, but I heard he's a really good godlike card there, so at least he has a strong presence in another game that lives up to his powerful state in the lore. And that concludes my top 5 Dead League champions. Remember that this is a list composed from my experiences recently, and so aside from taking suggestions, looking at pick rates in other servers, this list was made mostly from my opinion. If you have any champions that you think should be included, comment it down below. Hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, videos over, see ya.
Fade.